Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is international time zones. So there's a lot of information for this. I'm going to split it into two lessons, but basically we've got international time zones and we're going to look at just strictly Australian time zones. So with the international time zones, there's a lot of things to cover. So I just want to kind of, I've got the whole textbook here, so I guess we'll just kind of read through it. Now, what does this say? It's just kind of like, kind of stupid, but this is the Earth, obviously, and you've got your, that's not even the prime meridian or anything. This is the 120 degrees east meridian. So this is just some random line on the Earth. And it's just kind of saying that if the sun is directly over where your country is, so on your longitude, then it's midday for you. And I think that's kind of obvious. And when it is midday for you, then it's not midday for somebody else. That's kind of all this is saying. It's also saying that if you're on opposite sides of the world, then it's going to be midnight rather than midday. I think that's kind of obvious, but if you just think about it, if it's sunrise on this, then it's sunset on this. Anyway, this kind of looks a little bit different to what you would have seen back in 1101, but for this, this is kind of like the same graph, but we only care about the longitudes, and the reason is because we're looking at time zones, and time zones are split into longitudes. One thing to note is each of these go up by 15 degrees. So you would have seen before that, if that was my origin or equator, then this angle here is the 15 degrees, this angle here is the 30 degrees. It's going up by 15 degrees because if we've got our longitude split, it's split into 24 different segments, so 24 being the hours in the day. And our circle, so you imagine this is wrapped around, our circle has 360 degrees. 360 divided by 24 is 15. So that means each of these hours that we move along is also 15 degrees, and that corresponds to our longitude. So there is a relationship between time zones and the longitude of a country or whatever. So just keep that in mind. Before we call this the prime meridian, now we're going to call it the UTC. So when we're talking about latitude and longitude, you call this the prime meridian or the Greenwich meridian. When we're talking about time zones, we call this the UTC. So that just means like our reference point. So it's 0 here, which just all that means is if the sun is directly over here, then it's midday, and it's also 0 hours away from itself, if that kind of makes sense. So this is just kind of like the reference point. Australia is +10, so Australia is over here. So all that means is it's 10 hours ahead of the people that are living on the UTC. So that's all that means. So like this is +10 hours. So if you've heard, or if you're watching something, or if you're trying to watch something, you have to get up for it or something like that, and you look up the Australian time and it says AEST, all they're doing is they're getting the time that it's occurring at the UTC and they're adding 10 hours. So that's actually how that works. One other thing to note kind of is, let's suppose you're starting here, you start flying this way and you're adding on hours to your day, even though obviously you're traveling and that takes time too. And the same thing here, if you're starting to go this direction, then you're going back in time kind of. So if it takes you an hour to get from here to here, then it's going to be the same time as when you left, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah, so I guess if you just did a quick example, if we wanted to know the difference between Athens and New York, well, that's 5 hours and that's 2 hours. So that means their difference is 7 hours. And you would say that New York is 7 hours behind Athens. One cool thing is you've got the UTC here. If you think about this as the world, on the other side, so on the other side, you've got this line. That's called the international date line. And if you kind of think about this being folded, this and this are both the international date line, because that's where the fold would happen on the other side, if that makes sense. So it'd be like over here. If you cross the international date line, so let's suppose you fly this way. So I'm flying, and then the second I cross this, at the moment I'm minus 12 hours. The second I cross it and I end up over here, now I'm plus 12 hours. So I've kind of added 24 hours to my day. So in other words, you're skipping a day. So whenever you cross this, you might have heard the term, oh, you've lost a day. Well, quite literally, that's what you've done when you've crossed this line. So if you ever fly from, I don't know, if you've gone to America and you're trying to fly back, you're probably going to lose a day. And that's, I guess, why. Another thing is if you went in this direction, so if I was flying this way and then I cross this line, you're going backwards a day. So what I've heard of people doing is they watch New Year's, so like the 31st of December or 1st of January, they watch New Year's in New Zealand because that's the first time New Year's occurs, is here in New Zealand. And then what they do is they fly to here. Let's say they fly to Los Angeles, then it's going to be the 31st of December again because you would have gone backwards a day. So that's kind of cool. And that's something people actually do. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. If you're struggling to figure out where countries are, and this is a good little reference for you, it's even got Uruguay on it. That's just, so -11 would be all the way down here. So it's all the countries that are, I guess, sitting here, and there's a little bit of a reference there just in case there's a question and you don't really know where it is. Or you could have a globe, or you could have a stress ball, whatever, but just try and find out where your country is. It should tell you in a question. It'll tell you how many hours difference it is from the UTC, so then you can kind of use that. So I've got the reference up in the top corner here for when we do questions. And you'll notice that Australia is +10, which is what I was saying before. Okay, so that was the international date line. So that was what I was talking about before. It's just on the opposite side. Let's answer a question. So this is as far as I'm going to go for today. And then we start looking at Australian time zones. So this person's flying from New York to Turkey. New York is 5 hours behind the UTC. So if we're looking up here, you can see that New York is 5 hours behind, so it's there, 5 hours. And Turkey is 2 hours ahead of it. So here's our reference, 2 hours. It's kind of on the same line as Athens. It's not shown on this map, but that's where it is as a reference. At what time should he call so that it's 6 p.m. in Turkey? So what I like to do first is just make myself a little map. And obviously this is a little convoluted because there's so many things going on. So I just make myself a simple little map. So just do it by drawing a straight line. And then I say, okay, where's New York? Actually, we'll put the UTC in. So that's the UTC. Just put UTC, and it's 0 hours ahead or behind itself. It is itself. New York's 5 hours behind it. So let's put a 5 here for New York. And then Turkey is 2 hours ahead. So that's -5. And then 2 hours ahead. So that's Turkey. Okay. All right. So what have I got? What time should I call that it's 6 p.m. in Turkey? So I want to know it's 6 p.m. here. I want to know what time it's going to be here. So the first thing I need to do is identify what the difference is. And so the difference is 5 and 2. So this is the working out I'd show. I go, okay, the difference is 5 plus 2, which is quite obviously 7. So that's my difference there. And then I want to know my New York time. So I know what the Turkey time is at 6 o'clock. So then I'll write, I'll go New York, New York time. Okay, and that's going to be 6 p.m. Take away 7 hours. So that, and I normally do it with my fingers or whatever, but 6 hours. So if I took away 6 hours, that would bring me to 0 o'clock, which is midday. And then I take away another hour, and that would bring me to 11 a.m. So however you work that out, do it like that, but it can be confusing, particularly that step. So I generally, like if you wanted to, you could draw another line and be like, okay, well this is 12 p.m. and this is 6 p.m. and I want to go -7, so that's going to be -6, and then I minus another one, so that's going to be 11 a.m. So that's sometimes how I might work it out, but yeah. All right, B. This person boards a plane at 1:45 New York time, and the trip lasts 8.5 hours. Now what's the time when he arrives? So we know we've already worked out that it's 7 hours difference. So the first thing you want to do, what I normally do is, I know I'm starting in New York, so I'm starting in New York, and then I travel for 8.5 hours. So figure out what it is still in New York. So New York time is 1:45. Just wrote 54. 1:45 p.m. and I add 8.5 hours. So that's going to be oh, these questions are hard. 8.5 hours is the same as 8 hours 30 minutes. Questions like these are so confusing. Okay, so that brings me to, so 8 hours plus that is 9:45, and then 10:15 p.m. Okay, I hope that kind of makes sense. So I added 8 hours to this, so that made me 9, and then I added 30 minutes, so that took me to 10:15. That's how I got that. And then I can look up the Turkey time, which means I get my 10:15. And because I'm currently in New York, I'm currently there at 10:15 p.m. I want to go to Turkey time, so I have to add 7 hours. So I'm going to add 7 hours. Okay, so then that takes me to 2 hours takes me to midnight. Another 5 hours takes me to 5:15 a.m. And one thing to put in there is that it's the next day, because it's often confused with the fact that I could be looking at the same day, which would mean that I've gone backwards in time, but I haven't, I've gone forwards. So you just chuck in there that I've elapsed a day. So if you ever pass midnight, backwards or forwards, just say that you've moved a day. Okay, so that's it. So however you, I guess, want to work out these calculations, sometimes it's best just to do it with some sort of a timeline and just have like midnight or 0 o'clock and have 24 o'clock, which is like 12 a.m., which is the same as this, but like if I kind of like put midday here and try and, you know, make your calculations like that. You can do it on the calculator using the bubble button, so the button that has like a circle and 3 commas. You can do it like that, but in order to do that, you need to put this in 24-hour time. So there's a lot of things you can do, but even if you use your fingers or whatever, there's no real mathematically beautiful way of working these calculations out, but it's just whatever makes the most sense to you. And that's it.